I want to differentiate these two parts, security and privacy. So many of you are familiar with security in the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But privacy or data protection in Singapore has other concerns outside of that. Now, in that two circles, two standards are interesting to note. Those of you who are in IT will understand the 27000. So what is the difference? ISO 27001, you're probably familiar with ISMS. 27701 has to do with PIMS. So Privacy Information Management System. So they talk about improvement of privacy, protection of data breaches, customer satisfaction, marketing. So these are things, they are additional to the ISMS. So look at the trends in the region. There are now more sophisticated cybersecurity threats involving different apps, especially I think last 2 years, a lot of digitalization and mobile, and certification for individuals are going to be important, because in Singapore, we've been attracting a lot of new firms, and many of them are hiring compliance officers, and they want these compliance officers to be able to be benchmarked to a standard. Risk management is front and center of the data protection enforcement in terms of how companies are managing data protection.
My name is Dylan McCarthy. I'm Director of Corporate Sales for Druva here in Singapore. And so we are data protection for the cloud era, and very important to mention cloud era. And actually 50% of data now resides outside the corporate firewall. With, be it, a lot of work from home these days, how do you have an enterprise grade backup solution in place if you're a small branch office? And then really getting to the cloud, the cloud era, the emergence of SaaS. So Office 365, Google, Space, and Salesforce.com. How do you ensure that that's in compliance with things like PDPA and that it's available for you in case of a breach? So how do you ensure that that data in a different cloud is always safe and secure and available in the case of any ransom? I don't need a backup if I'm using cloud app like Office 365 or Google or Salesforce, right? So you think, Microsoft will look after it for me. In fact, it's false. And so just remember that it's a shared responsibility model when you're using these productivity tools that most of us are going towards now, and that you have to ring fence your data and make sure it's safe and secure. This is a real life experience that happened about a year ago in the US, where an IT worker who was let go was unhappy, and a few months later, he still had his login credentials. He logged into the Microsoft 365 environment and deleted 1,200 of their 1,500 Microsoft Office accounts. And so essentially ground the business to a halt. Productivity stopped. It took them 2 days to get back up and running. They didn't have any access to their contact list or meeting calendars, etc. So a real life example, it does happen, and it is real. And obviously it costs them, a huge amount of money. And so you absolutely want to ensure that your data is ring fenced, that it's in compliance with GDPR and PDPA. And if it's not, yes, you get hit with the fines. There's costs involved. How can you have a system in place to bounce back and be in compliance after a ransomware attack? The ransom demands are going up because hackers know companies will pay. And if you think about the Colonial Pipeline just a few months ago in the US, they paid $4 million to get their decryption key. $4 million. If they just had a backup and recovery solution from Druva, it would have cost them a fraction of that, right? But they didn't, unfortunately. And so they were way out of compliance, and they had to get back up and running because they were grinding the economy to a halt in the US. Hackers are very clever these days, right? What they do is they go after your backup first, which is syncing to your disaster recovery site and your offsite and your cloud, and they encrypt that, and then they encrypt your production environment, and then they go, hey, pay up. And you got no place to go. There's a lot of people using cloud these days, like Microsoft and G Suite, but also AWS and Azure. And your endpoints, your laptops, right? Working remotely from home. So we've got a proactively monitoring dashboard within the Druva Cloud platform where you can auto-monitor data from your backups to detect any violations to, say, GDPR or PDPA. And if you see those violations, you can address those violations and defensively delete them. And what that means is, I'll give you an example. Let's say HR has a list of your employees and their passport numbers next to it, for instance. Only HR should have that. If you see within your environment that someone, say in sales, has it, you can go, he shouldn't have that, and you can defensively delete it from his laptop and delete it from the backup, and it brings you back into compliance with PDPA. So very important, right, to be able to delete from both backup and the source. So you can create your own policies within the Druva Cloud platform and use rules like right to access, like Alvin talked about. People, hey, how'd you get my data? or people also have the right to be forgotten. How do you recover from ransomware? And the answer is, some of the answers, the Druva Cloud Platform is air-gapped from your production environment. We do this differently than all our competitors. When we store the data in the Druva Cloud Platform, we split it into metadata and block data and essentially store it as objects in the cloud.
Let's now look at how companies can get themselves be compliant. You might be a vendor, or you might be a customer engaging a few vendors. So clearly you might want to have some standards of doing the due diligence on these vendors. Or if you're a vendor, then your customers might come and say, this is the way we want to kind of assess you, and there might be some standards. So it's good to have some standard way of ensuring compliance with respect to personal data protection. So, in Singapore's context, there are definitely government organizations which are looking for vendors to be compliant. Number one, they check whether you have a DPMP, or they are even somewhere, in some cases, they are insisting that it's good to have a DPTM certification, the Data Protection Trust Mark certification. So there's a lot of due diligence happening when you bid for various tenders, and it's just not even happening in government. Recently, there was Gokoland, which was looking for their vendors to show their compliance with respect to personal data. One of the key things that comes up all the time is whether we have money, resource, and time. Clearly, in terms of money, the Singapore government is supporting a lot of these digital initiatives. There are multiple pools, multiple buckets of funding available. In terms of resource, it's about having a good program. Then this is with respect to what's the time that is taken. So right from the time the project gets kicked off to the time you come up with a robust data protection management program, it's about 6 weeks. So it's not that it's going to take months and years. It's just going to take 6 weeks to get the right kind of program in place. Straits also helps with trust mark advisory once you have a DPMP in place, to go to the next step of getting and applying for the DPTM certification. We have an excellent tool called the DPO Inbox, through which we kind of guide the companies through this journey with the relevant dashboards by which the gaps can be identified. Through at least it exposes the gaps, and the companies can go and fix those gaps before they go and apply for the DPTM certification. Companies can decide to either go with the DPTM trust mark in Singapore, or it can go for the 27701. If you look at from an individual human competency, one is on the knowledge of the data protection laws in Singapore, across the region. Then you have the skills, the project management skills that for running the data protection management program. We have roadmaps for both of them. More than 5,000 people have gone through our courses. More than 50 plus courses that individuals can have access to. Register into our DPEX network, you'll be able to have access to all of those. We provide a roadmap, either for the organization or for the individual.
We have 12 questions. Is it mandatory for organization to have backup recovery stored in Singapore? Are we allowed to have it stored overseas? I'm sure you get this a lot.
No problem. We can do that, right? But they do have the flexibility. When you get set up, you can select your storage location. And so if you want to keep it in Singapore, that's no problem.
The other one, latest PDPA revision. Define what is data breach, must be impacted 250 people or more. What is expectation of organization to report only relevant breach? Okay, so I can answer that because we are also the appointed speakers for PDPC, and I recently gave a talk to an organization on behalf, is that if it's likely to result in significant harm, okay, or significant scale. So then you have to do two things. That's either to PDPC and or to affected individuals. Now, to the individual is if it's going to be of significant harm. Example is that if it has sensitive data like the IC and full name, plus any of these sensitive data, financial, medical, insurance, account information, plus any biometric, security access code, password. When it happens, there is prescribed 4 steps to handle or respond, right? In your data breach plan, you need to make sure you can do all these 4, which is the CARE methodology, which we have programmed into our DPO inbox. By the way, said mandatory this year, so no longer that, I didn't know, right? But what does that mean for those of you who are maybe vendor yourself, be mindful maybe some of your contracts have shorter than 3 days. So let me just share with you, when we talk to customers, what the data protection trust mark process is like. Okay, so this is their checklist. Just recently, they put in a lot more prescriptive measures in terms of what they're looking for. Next question is, despite training and reminders, there are still incidents where staff send emails to unintended recipients through chain mails. Any effective endpoint controls to address such leakages?
We have file violation, but we also have email violation. If there's, sensitive data in the emails, and you can see it, we can't see it. We do it by strings, by your compliance policies that you see, and then you'll see if there's offending emails. You'll be able to delete those emails as well from the individual and from the backup, bringing you back into compliance. So that applies for both emails and for files on individuals.
With regard to PDPA due diligence conducted on vendors, would it suffice for financial institutions to leverage on the MAS outsourcing guidelines only? Can you show me evidence of compliance, preferably if you have some sort of standards? So what we look out for? Are they ISO or they are data protection trust mark? Especially if they're a big vendor to you, your HR, your payments, or they're doing mobile apps for you, or your CRM. So you want to check with them, because you may not know how to audit it, but using these standards is the best way for you to get a clearance. A question for you. Can you enumerate again the ISO references for you guys, especially in IT? You are in an excellent spot, especially if you have no DPO or you happen to be invited to look at data protection. The hottest job, okay, is the data protection job. And what they're looking for is actually people who know these things, whether you have standards, whether you know how to get them to a professional level of compliance data protection management program. These are part of the skill sets of a data protection officer. You're not just doing just the data protection piece. There's the BCM piece of the work. There is incident handling. There's risk management. It's an augmented skill for the data protection, especially if you are in a firm that has regional footprint. One more question. Would you have an insurance for cyber security? Was that under our data protection as a service, there was a preferential rate that you can get for cyber insurance. We have some arrangement with some cyber insurers who can talk to you, and they can give you compare and contrast, what kind of coverage you need. Make sure you have your backyard in order, which is why we run it together with the data protection as a service, because they want to see evidence of a systematic compliance. If you are high-risk clients who are unable to show credible evidence, then obviously a premium will go up. Okay, that's why they partner us, because they say most of our clients, when they ask questions, they can answer and they can give the report, they can give the table, they can give the dashboard, and that assures them, and that's why you get good rates.
We have a special offer at the moment, guys, where we're offering 15 months for the price of 12. So if you take it with, be it your M365, your Google Workspace, or your Salesforce, and also your endpoints, and then separately, if you're doing it for your data centers, then we give you some credits for free. Happy to share that with you. If we have a chat, 15-20 minutes just to assess your environment, what you're using, how you'd like it to be.
Some of you are asking our DPO inbox. We have an academy that runs through the demo, who will run through the scenarios of operational compliance, and it's free. So take advantage of these things that we offer as a service to the community of data protection officers.
For more data protection resources, visit www.dpaxnetwork.org, the Data Protection Excellence Network, and sign up for free as a member to have full access to all content. Do also like and follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn if you found this useful.